we're coming up at 10 here, and we'll see what our audience looks like. Otherwise, this may be a very in-depth or a very short conversation, how it goes.
Is there a lot of people signed up for it, or?
There was a group of about 13 folks registered. But again, it's one of those free events, right? So yeah. Sometimes you get a huge crowd because of that. And sometimes people are like, well, I don't have any skin in the game. So
well, I won't know how much I'll have to offer. I'll offer as much as I can. I was hoping on learning, but I will.
Well, yeah, it's more, what kind of questions do you have, really? I mean, what made you chime in? What made you, what do you think? What our focus kind of is challenges that we're looking at for this year. So like, what are some of the challenges you see facing right now?
Now, as far as like the maintenance goes,
in anything, you know, whether it be your maintenance, whether it be your internal operations, whether it be, oh, now we're starting to get some more folks. Good.
Okay.
But yeah, the focus of discussion is really just, it's a roundtable. There's no script. There is no, this isn't a webinar, you know, This is meant to be valuable to everyone that chimes in today. And so I have a few agenda items that we can entertain, but if what I have ready to go doesn't match what you need, let's start with where you're at and what do you need? You know, looking at 2023 outlooks, I see some things trend wise that, you know, there's business trends that we're getting hit with, whether it be the supply chain, whether it be increasing prices, inflation, something that's out of our control, but it is going to something we have to look at. I mean, even cost per mile last year was 62.5 cents. Now it's 65.5 cents. You know, so even that kind of thing adds up incrementally. So like starting today, it's the focus is to add value. You're investing your time in being here. So I want folks to step away from this feeling it was worth their time. I know I see some names and some faces that I recognize from other meetings. So there's folks here that have interests in trails. There's folks here that have interests in public works. There's some folks here that may just have interest in not listening to something else that they usually listen to right now. So here, I do have a poll, since we do have more people now. Let's start with the poll and kind of see, you know, what are some of the challenges we see coming this year. So I'm going to launch this beginning discussion poll. So I'm asking you to tier based on these choices here. What would be your top priority, your middle priority, and your, you know, it's going to be a problem priority B. So I have staffing, you know, implementing technology, supply chains, legislative changes, aging infrastructure, stormwater, and sustainable operations. So there's a lot of buzz terms in here, but let's see what your top problem is going to be, your top challenge this year, and let's tier it down from there. And we'll see, hopefully this will guide some of our discussion.
Do you want us just to answer question number one, or
there's three of them in here. So go ahead and answer all three. We'll see where we're at. And that way we tier it. We'll kind of see where people are feeling the most impact. And folks, if you are the first time chiming in one of our sessions, please feel free to chime in, unmute yourself, show your screen. This is an open discussion. This is definitely not a webinar. And the more that you contribute, the more value it adds for everyone. So we're looking at backlog, okay. And then it's almost a three-way tie for our other concerns. Oh, interesting, okay. Third is backlog there too. Stormwater, and legislation, supply chains. So we're all over the place here. That should make a good diverse discussion then. I'm going to go ahead and end that poll so it's out of your screen and I can get it out of my way. So welcome, folks. I'm BK. My name is Brian Kaler. No one, fairly rarely do they say my surname correctly, especially up in the Erie area. So I just go by BK. And it's remembered, call me Brian, call me BK, have it your way. Anyways, that's my joke for today. Thank you for joining us. Our focus is adding value to you, talking on maintenance operations issues that are impacting your day-to-days or things that you want to learn about that may be challenges that others have here. So I'm going to open things up. Let's kind of see if we want. I saw aging infrastructure. And so that may have been some answers, whether that been as a top priority for you or it may be down the list. But what is some of the aging infrastructure and or backlog that we're looking at?
A lot of masonry bridges, footbridges, historic structures mainly. Yeah.
Okay. So the historic, that adds a whole nother layer of potentially red flags and things in there. That's interesting. Okay. Thomas, you were going to jump in?
Yeah, my name's Tom. I'm in Virginia, and our community center is 41 years old, and it's not been taken care of. And I also am in charge of a marina, which is falling into the river, and it's a political nightmare. And we have 23,000 people in our city, and 17 of them get to use the marina, yet they don't want us to fix it or change it. They don't want to put any money into it. And we have roofs over our docks, and they are literally falling in as we speak. And so I'm facing, all kinds of issues. And we continue to go to council and say, hey, we need to fix this. We need to do this. And somebody's going to die before. Same thing with our building. It's we have an indoor pool, absolute nightmare. We have a gym on the other end of the building. We just put a new roof on because we had 92 buckets every time it rained. So I'm just all over the country jumping in on stuff, trying to figure out what everybody else is doing and how you're doing with facing city councils that don't want to help you and, liability wise. And we don't have money. Oh, we don't have money for this. We don't have money for that. But if somebody dies, then you're going to be paying out a whole lot of money. So.
Yeah, there's that saying, what do you want to be on the front page of the news for? A good thing or a bad thing?
But
I see a lot of head nodding. Are there some agreements in these situations, or does this sound familiar for folks? Or sorry to cut you off there, Tom. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Oh, I can go. I mean, same thing. So I'm Jasmine Acosta. I'm from Philadelphia. Pauline, I see you work for Friends of Wissahickon. Right, is that you? So I'm with the William Penn Foundation. And my giving areas is parks and public spaces, specifically in Philadelphia and the 5 surrounding counties. And Tom, the like political layer is super real and very power motivated. And I had those same questions. We started something in Philadelphia called Rebuild, which is basically to address this like maintenance issue in the capital structures, in public spaces, rec centers, and also libraries. But there's still not a good, why I'm attending today is there's still not a good answer for just like on an ongoing fund. At present, and I've been trying to look at other city models about how they tackle this, and it all comes down to they end up like taxing themselves. And unless you have, a base that can support that and can be bipartisan led and agreed on, and people actually value these spaces and places, it's hard to win over. Anyway, just saying I feel you. And the emergency level is always high. I think a lot about I come from a background in parks too, and I think a lot about, and also I have a forestry degree, about tree maintenance and just like the absolute like worst case scenario when people are walking on trails. And Pauline, I'm sure you think about that too. So anyway, just chiming in to say I have empathy, but no solution.
Steve, you're over on the west side of Philly. Well, I won't call it Philly. You're over west of Philly, but close enough to kind of feel some of their the political things, right? If
Yeah.
you will, you feel the impact of some of that, and I know you feel the impact of traffic and the expansion of things. So, what is your take? You're not in the city, but you're over there, Upper Darby. So, how is that in a comparison? Do you think?
Well, about what I was going to say, like my concern is, I can throw it out there too, is the aging park equipment, the playground equipment. And one of the things that we found out is there's like 4 different manufacturers. I can't tell you how. I'm new to the position. I've only been here for a couple months, but I've been around the parks here in Upper Darby for many years, so I know them. But the problem we find is that there isn't replacement parts. Like the equipment is so old that there's not a replacement part for it. And the other thing when I'm talking with the park guys is they're like, dude, there's 4 different companies that bought this stuff. This company is no longer in existence. You cannot replace that. You cannot repair this. And it's just that, like, we've had things where we take in whole things of equipment out and not put something in yet. And that's the concern. So you got to say, okay, well, people want to enjoy the park and have fun, and then you're taking out the one structure, but you don't have the money to put something in there. And then that's just the tough part.
Yeah, we did that last year. We had, and he's right. There are playground companies are buying up each other, so they're getting smaller and smaller. And we had a situation where we had a slide that ended up having a cut in it at the bottom, where the plastic had separated apart. And if a kid slid down it, he's going to cut himself. So we just closed the playground because it wasn't a huge playground. You can't stop kids, if you put up tape or whatever, it doesn't matter. We closed the playground. It was 11 months before we could get a slide. So our playground is closed, but we run the liability if we leave the playground open and just put tape up. Kids, they're just going to see the tape and go. So we faced, all kinds of, hey, when's the playground going to open? Well, it took us 11 months to get a slide, and so that's not even talking about structures. You're going to fall in and kill people. You're just talking about an inconvenience for people. And it's a small place, but that's what we're facing right now. You hear the supply chain. You're hearing all kinds of stuff. I feel for you guys in big cities because I'm a small city, and we're right in the middle of the state, so we have easy access. And I have a lot of playground companies real close by, and they're like, yeah, we can fit this and we can fit that. It may not be the same exact company, but the slide will fit to it. It's gotten to that point where, okay, if I can make it fit and it works and it's not a safety hazard, then I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I guess one question for all of you, in a sense, where are you at with knowing what you have within your systems, having that all documented, and then having a lifespan, basically capital replacement? Where are you at with asset management? Where are you at with starting to inventory the things that you are maintaining and then calculating that? Because a lot of our conversation here does go back to deferred maintenance. And so a lot of what I've been finding, and it doesn't matter if you're in a big city or if you're in a very, very rural area, the powers that be that are running the purse are going to want to know, why am I spending the money on this? Or why is it cost this? And so without the data and without the receipts, essentially, and that kind of spreadsheet to show that tracking, how can we say that other than, well, it's expensive? Where are we at with those kind of tools?
We're a nonprofit, so we do it on a case-by-case basis. So either it'll be heavy reporting from the public of specific things that aren't working, or we see evident damage of collapse. And then we have to raise money to get, a conditions assessment to tell us how much money it's going to cost to fix it. So, it's
So you're not
always
allowed
on the
to
long
do the
timer
work
side.
yourself, basically. You're always doing a subcontract kind of based on the project, if I'm hearing correctly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
that's
We're
a
always
different way of,
contracting out our projects. Mhm.
so how do you try to kind of, or can't you, in a sense, do you have like an overall big picture of these are how many bridges that we have, and then these are the ones that are going to be under
Right.
contract now, and then down the road that one's
Mhm.
going to be 10 years from now, or where are you at with that?
Well, there's a whole mix. There are like some smaller structures that we work on ourselves with our volunteers, so that
Okay.
we have, an inventory of those. And every year we prioritize what needs to be fixed, what needs to be rebuilt, what are new structures that are going in for the larger scale infrastructure that we need to contract out. We have existing assessments that have been provided by the city that we've done ourselves. And we just see which is the most fundable. Unfortunately, what is the highest need project may not be the most fundable. So you just have to kind of switch your lens in that sense, which is always a challenge.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I had somebody step in. I think I caught what you guys were saying. We just do like on our parks and our playgrounds. We started 7 years ago and made a master plan. We have 18 parks and playgrounds in our city, made a master plan. We started doing capital projects one a year, going to council and saying, we're going to do this, this, and this. In some cases, we got matching funds through grants. And we got to 2 years ago when COVID hit, and we have 3 playgrounds left. One of them is the closest one to our high school. It's one of our oldest in the city. It is a hazard, for lack of a better word. And so our city manager at the time was like, okay, just level it and leave it there. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't level a playground in a park that has some elements, swings and stuff, or places that people can see. He's like, well, that's the only way we're going to get money. And I'm like, I'm not going to level a park because I don't know how long it's going to sit there. And here we are 2 years later, still have no money, but I have 3 playgrounds who need replacing. And so we keep documenting. We do an inspection every 2 months, and we do a yearly inspection, and I document it. This playground needs to be replaced. Council will not approve money. And I continue to document that. So if something happens, we can pull up the documentation. Who knows if it's legal or not, but I'm doing everything I can to do that. So
It's at least CYA for you.
yeah, we hope so.
Legally, liability wise, no, if anything, it's kind of one of those situations like a ski resort where they know there's a certain pathway in a certain area, and they keep putting the pins on there every time they keep track of the records of the injuries. That's almost showing that there's something wrong. That's where you're proving your own negligence.
Tom, have you had your council people like on site? Have you done tours with them?
Yes. And we just had new council come on board. They vote. And so we just had 4 of our 7 new councilors voted in. We actually took them on a tour. And the first place we took them was our marina. And we had a grant for $1.4 million. The city was going to match it for 1.4. Last May, our old council voted for us to proceed with tearing down the marina, rebuilding it. And we had this whole plan together, $2.8 million. Long story short, it got drug out. We have a new council, and the new council is like, no, we don't want to tear up the marina. And again, it's a political thing. We want to save the marina. We want to do all kinds of stuff. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here going, this is going to fall on somebody's head. But yeah, we have taken council to all of our playgrounds. We've taken them to the marina, and they're like, no, this can be economic development. And I'm sitting here thinking, I've heard that for 25 years. You're not developing. Nobody's going to buy it. It's not going to be developed. We want to let the rest of the citizens use this marina besides the 17 people who have boats there. So yeah, we've done that. And I want to keep my job. So let's just say, they're not listening very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, know when to pick your fights, because there's definitely ones that you end up picking the wrong fight, right?
Absolutely, yes. I don't, it's kind of a weird situation with the marina too. And we have other projects that are similar to that, but it's just real tough right now. And I think the economy here and real estate assessments and stuff is gonna help us. So we're hoping we get some capital money soon. But again, you know, it may come down to leveling a playground before they say, oh man, you know, what do we do? I can't continue to leave it there and take the chance of some kid getting hurt, you know?
Mhm.
And I apologize, guys. I got to step out to another meeting. I got to go to City Hall, but I really enjoyed this and look forward to talking to you guys in the future. So,
Please come back.
yeah, BK, anytime you have something, shoot me an email. I would love to talk to you guys. This is great. It helps me, even in a different state, listening to other people with the same issues. So,
Will do. So I guess, Jasmine, I'm going to pick your brain a little bit. Since you're in the foundation, if you will, you are the pockets in certain situations. And so, you know, how do folks mold their message, as Pauline says, or how do you make sure that maybe our priorities shift based on the priorities of the powers that be? You know, how do we stay on top of that, and how do we know?
I mean, I think every foundation is going to have a different lens that they're looking at funding public spaces in, if that's the strategy that they want to fund. I know for us, we have a pretty overt equity lens and like racial lens. And so we're trying to fund areas that have been chronically underserved. I mean, Philadelphia as a whole is chronically underserved in its public spaces, but even within there, there's layers. And I think, you know, I think it also is just the focus of each individual program officer, or the person who is, you know, managing the funds. I know for me, like I'm really trying to crack this nut of sustainable, ongoing funding for maintenance. And then the other part of that sort of like goes hand in hand is like an advocacy piece. And that's what I was hearing with Tom, like people who work in the nonprofits that support these public spaces. What I'm seeing are just like very fractured. And Pauline, like, feel free to give more insight into this or push back. Like I'm curious of your position, and also Steve. But I don't think that for this city, there's like one advocacy base that can like pressure some of the politicians and council people. And that's, you know, that as a funder is like we can't necessarily advocate, we can only sort of respond to applicants and hopefully try to like partner with people who are applying to us. So I don't know, I'm curious also if either of you two have feedback for, you know, someone that has some sort of like purse string of like, hey, it'd be really great if XYZ, or if you could fund XYZ, or this is a high need that's like a whole. I'm also all ears. That's why I wanted to like listen in today to see if there were areas that I'm not thinking about.
Yeah, I think that besides money, the biggest constraint for us is liability. We don't have agreements with the city, you know, should anything happen on park property that we wouldn't be sued and be forced to close. So that's always something that we're thinking about, and that is what frequently prevents us from undertaking more than we would like to.
Well, on that piece, I know there is, and there has been historically, legislation that keeps trying to get up there into the state of protection for volunteers and the 503Cs and things like that. And so that there are people trying to get that going. It just needs more momentum, and it needs to get past that desk. It gets stuck because it always passes, 400 and something to 0. And then it gets stuck on a desk and never gets voted on. So that's that advocacy piece, but it is dangling out there, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Steve, on
feel
the
like it's been
municipal side, where
years.
do you see some of these connections, between the nonprofits and the governments that be? Where some, is there a miss somewhere, or is there opportunity that maybe people are overlooking?
Well, still being relatively new to this, I will say that there's been a couple, nonprofits I know that we've worked with to actually help get funding. One, for example, was like a skate park that's gonna be built. And that there was a coalition that we partnered with to where they actually went for a grant. And got a grant, are gonna help with that. We have an active volunteer group of tree tenders who do lots of stuff and are awesome. And go to a lot of our parks, help with maintenance and everything there, and programming. Like, I'm working with them to do 2 programming this summer, which I'm gonna talk with them later this week about. So it's just that I think sometimes finding people or making the connections somehow in the community with people who do care about the parks. Because when you find the people that care about them, they're like awesome. And they'll want to talk to you all the time. You're like, yeah, that's great. I want to talk to you all the time. But I want to hear from other areas as well too. And again, that's what one of the things we're trying to do too, is like to get the Friends of Parks started. And because we have about 29 parks actually in our area. And now some of them are seriously a swing set and a slide at the end of a street where people are like, I didn't know that even existed. And there are some that don't even have names, that there's just playground equipment like in the middle of houses. You're like, I didn't know that was here. And I'm like, yeah, there's so many parks people don't know about unless you live by it. And that's my other thing too. That's what I'm trying to do, is trying to get it all coordinated to where everybody knows what's in the area. And Upper is huge, relatively speaking, but we have all these parks and people don't know about it. You only know about the one you live down the street from. So that's, I might be off on a tangent, but that's what I'm trying to get everybody in their community together to buy in or get their ideas. And that's another area I have problems with, reaching everybody and not just the same people over and over again.
And that's some of the things I'm seeing more. You had, different trends and things. Well, a lot of the public works has been going very heavily into GIS. All that is maps, really, at the end of the day, and then putting pins on a map and adding data points to all of those pins, so it's hitting the mapping piece that now you can use and send that layer of information over to the marketing team or the promotion team or the programming team or whoever. And now they have that data available, but now they can build their layers of information on top of, oh, well, we do this programming here, this program, this, at those points that are already built in there. So now all these silos that live within our worlds are at least using one knowledge base, as opposed to recreating their own knowledge bases over and over and over again, and maybe missing stuff. And so now we're starting to funnel the information into one place that also is publicly available. So when people start saying, well, I never knew that, well, it's there. Look it up. I'm not gonna.
That's what I think. Well, the problem I have with that is like, we do have that, like you'll have the mapping and stuff on the website, and no one's going on the website.
And that could be usability issue. So that's a different layer.
Yeah, and that, or like the promoting of events and stuff that go on. I mean, it's like not everybody's following social media. Not everybody, like where we are, not everybody's going and looking, hey, let me see what's going on the website. It's not. So that's where I'm trying to go back and finding a lot of it old school, making signs, laminating them, zip tying, going to the park, going to community meetings and stuff and getting input. Like I said, that's where I'm still in the infancy of it, is like trying to interact with everyone in the community and see what everybody wants, not just saying, hey, I got this program. It's like, no, what programs do you want? So that's what I'm still trying to work on and towards, and to see how I can reach more people. Because yeah, the website is available, but no one's going on it.
Well, I mean, I want to dig at that question then. How are you collecting the data? I mean, what has been successful in getting those? Because I find on the nonprofit side, we always send out surveys. We always survey. Well, when you really look at it, the data at the end of the day, who's answering those surveys? The same people over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So you're always getting the same data. So we're saying, oh, we're sending a very diverse survey and hitting yeah, well, that's great. You can throw it out there as much as you want, but if you're always collecting the same data, there's something going on there. Is your data accurate, or is it just kind of based on you're changing your mean to whatever you want it to be? That's what I love about statistics, you know.
Yeah. Well, I don't want, again, still starting out at this. I don't have any survey that's out there. That's what I'm trying to get. And again, in communicating with local groups and community organizations and just try to get that. I mean, we have a rec committee that we work with and trying to get everybody to say, hey, invite more people. We do park cleanups and meet people in the neighborhood. Like I've done a couple with that. I volunteered with the Parks Department before I started working here. So I went to those cleanups and got to talk to people. And now I'm in a position where, okay, now I'm going to be running those and trying to get the input of the community. So that's why I can't wait for when spring finally hits us and we can start doing that again. I can start talking to people.
Good.
More.
Jasmine, you're dealing with the underserved. How are you getting the information from the underserved? How do they feel comfortable speaking up?
Yeah, I mean, the foundation has funded a lot of like community engagement processes and used or like a part, you know, a nonprofit focused on parks or like a specific neighborhood might partner with others that represent immigrant groups or, you know, that are just like reach a wider constituency. And I think like funding that process and those processes is really worthwhile because that's, you know, you're not going to get a diverse voice from just talking to the people who are already showing up. So Steve, if you have the funds, I would say try to put some money behind a consultant who can help you with a community engagement process. Sorry, did that answer the question? I think that answered the
No,
question.
you're definitely on the right stream. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you know, even still with our public spaces, you know, surveying and door knocking, and you think you have a diverse voice, and then you make decisions about how a space should be, and then folks show up and say like, hold on, I never got to weigh in. And I think that's an ongoing issue too. It's like, how do you incorporate the voices that come after the official process? And as a funder too, like that's a hard one for us because we try to partner, but we also like, you know, I'm not the expert of these spaces or Parks and Rec. And so I have to sort of like defer to their decision-making as well around that.
And there's always going to be the haters no matter what decision is made. You know, as soon as somebody makes a decision, there's always going to be the contrary, just because that's what they do. And we need those people too, because that keeps things balanced.
And like a high bar. So
sure.
Mm-hmm.
Pauline, you know, you touched on something a little bit in your historic. You know, once you throw historic in there, that's almost like saying, oh, it's a wedding chair. You know, a chair costs this much when you rent it, but if it's a wedding chair, holy shit. You know, so historic is that whole another layer of things that, or is it not in what you're doing? Because usually when I hear historic, now you have to use old techniques and old technology, and or are you not hitting that as much? You're just saying, well, it's historic because it's Philly.
Yeah, well, no, it's historic. It has historic designation. And sometimes we do our best to just kind of avoid any impact to those historic structures, but sometimes they're like kind of in the line of fire where there's historic retaining walls that are collapsing into, you know, eroding stream banks that need to be restored. So we work closely with Parks and Recreation. Their historic preservation office is housed there. And then our projects go under review by the Pennsylvania Historic and Museum Commission. And we always have to lay out our plans for, our best and good faith effort to restore where we can, not touch where that's possible, and, kind of be honest where this wall is going to be crumbling and falling in regardless of whether we do this project or not. And then smaller projects, or small, like fixing of repointing, that has been an issue because there's not many folks that are trained in it at this time. Especially thinking like Power Core is a group that we've been working with in Philadelphia, and having job training and skills training around improving these historic structures would be such a win-win relationship for them to find jobs down the line. And then also, we're not the only park that has these historic structures. So making sure that that knowledge continues on when the maintenance needs to be done.
No, I am a big proponent. I would love to see more of our parks and public spaces becoming those workforce development opportunities, and seeing examples like Power Core or Land Force out in Pittsburgh, and those kind of getting the next generation of workforce for our public spaces. Because when you talk at folks like Steve and his crew, that retention, you only can keep the retention for so long, but we're not paying like the private sector. So when construction it booms, all your trades are going over to that side of the house, and they're not going to be, when you're 25, you're not thinking about life insurance. You're not thinking about health insurance as much, or it doesn't have the value that it might when you hit my age. Do you find that those programs are becoming more prevalent, or are they harder to really get going? Because I also hear people that are in the workforce development, it's a harder sell now. So kind of where is that?
Yeah, I don't know if I
mix?
can speak to it overall. I know that we at Friends of the Wissahickon, we've recently embarked, I think we're in year 2 of a relationship with Power Core, specifically in their forestry and Sawyer program. And that has been great for us. And I know that a couple of other nonprofits in Philadelphia are also going to be starting soon with a relationship with Power Core, specifically to do like the vegetation portion of trails management, or trails maintenance rather. So looking to see how those relationships evolve, and see if not new programs, for example, like masonry training, could be built into it. But beyond that, I don't know that I can speak to the overall trend.
Sure. Yeah, the live edge, and that they took over the getting rid of the downed wood and things like that. And I know they were doing that down there in they're building basically a timber mill down there by their composting area. I got to see that last
in General
year.
Park. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. So where are other questions at this point from folks? We've hit on a few topics, but what other kind of burning challenges or things that were out there? I'm trying to go back to my survey poll results here. Legislation administration came up on a couple of people's folks. So what is some of the legislation or administrative challenges that you're facing or concerned about?
I think I had put that as an answer, and speaking mostly to liability.
Gotcha.
And advocacy work that could be done around that, and having legislation move forward into law. So
Yeah, we'll put that on the hope list for this year again. They did pass the open space one, so that was a big one for at least more rural and suburban areas, where the Act 18 last year allowed that if you had funding earmarked for preserving space and acquiring spaces, they spread out the budget more. It used to be 100% of that money had to be at acquisition only, but now you're allowed to use up to 25% of that for maintaining and or developing that space. So that now you can use it and keep it, as opposed to just get more, and now you just got more to maintain. So that is some of that legislative piece of allowing that funding to be used for ongoing maintenance and kind of, so hopefully we can see some more of that kind of trends too. Because as you mentioned, a lot of the funding and the grants, there are no maintenance grants. At least I am very unaware of any of them. And if there are
Very
any,
few
please
and
let me
far
know.
between.
They're a couple $100 kind of thing. It's not necessarily a $250,000 lump.
Yeah,
can
I
go and
did
use.
go to a webinar last week about accessing DOT funding
Oh,
for park and trail projects, and one of them is geared maybe toward maintenance. And so it was a large webinar. I didn't have my questions answered, so I do want to follow up, given that I'm working on a much smaller scale of 5 to 10, no more than that, miles of trail in a 2,000-ish acre park. But,
right.
that was a good sign.
Was
Well,
that?
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just gonna ask her, was it PennDOT?
No, it was
Federal?
like federal. Yeah,
Federal,
so
okay.
federal funding programs, set aside programs for recreational trails to develop and then maintain recreational trails. So I think that it would be much more challenging to get that type of funding to maintain natural surface trails, which is the majority of what I'm dealing with. But we do have, gravel trails, paved trails, a couple of those. So I think that funding would align well with those type of trails. And there is a lot of I think like being very deliberate with the words that you use, that recreational trails are important, but like having connections and having those trails be used also as transportation alternatives is something that DOT is more looking to fund in terms of having fewer single occupancy vehicles kind of in that context.
Thanks.
Let me send the link that I got from these into the chat.
Now, how about another buzz term I'm going to throw out there is sustainable? How is that being defined within your organizations, and what are some of the efforts that you're doing to align with more environmentally friendly operations or more sustainable approaches to managing your spaces?
Well, the Wissahickon is a watershed park. It was created to protect Philadelphia's drinking water, and it's also a very steep and forested gorge. So we experience a lot of pressure of development in the watershed, a lot of runoff going into the creek. And so a lot of what we do is really to protect water quality, to reduce runoff and promote infiltration where we can. So for the last 20 years, we have been rerouting, rebuilding trails for them to be more sustainable along the contour so that they're not becoming just conduits for stormwater. That drives everything that we do is really stormwater management.
And are you trying to incorporate any stormwater, BMPs as part of that as well? So like, okay, we're diverting here, but we put a bioswale over there as a catch now. And okay.
Yeah, so we have BMPs in terms of our trail building, designing them to shed water off in a sheet flow manner, We do strategic plantings in areas. We also have, stone basins that will be in specific areas off of the trail along with a water bar so that the water will flow off
Sure.
the trail into these stone basins and slowly infiltrate back into the soil.
That's great. And who's helping you kind of design those, or who's is it like Penn State Extension, or are you going
Yeah.
outside consulting, or where are those
Yeah,
resources
we
you're
have
finding?
contracted out a lot of the work that we've done. And because we rely so heavily on volunteers for this work, a lot in the past have been able to work alongside contractors. And so we're building knowledge base in-house with our own volunteers. So that's some of that work we can do on our own.
And what tools have you created to keep that, and push it down the line forward? Have you created like little
Ooh.
manuals or field guides, or like, is it just on-site training kind of thing? What the process is?
I would say, yeah, we do have field manuals and documentation. I think that there has been some gap in knowledge in the last few years between COVID and staffing changes. It's been a long time since we've had that fresh training opportunity for our volunteers. So I think looking forward, having, like SOPs or having better documentation of this is exactly what we did in this area, or we see this issue, and then that triggers this approach.
Right. Steve, does this sound similar with what you're getting over on your side there? Or do you guys have MS4 over in Upper Darby as well? Are you getting hit with the stormwater credit issues and things?
We are, I don't feel that I can actually speak on the matter though.
Okay.
Like, I don't think I have that much of a knowledge base on it to actually say much that would mean anything. But yeah.
Or I guess do residents get hit with a stormwater credit like they do in Philadelphia, where it's essentially a tax being added?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
That's what.
Gotcha. Okay. That was one thing I found interesting about Philadelphia that was unique, is they're just hitting every single resident with, here you go, here's a bill.
Yeah.
That's one approach, and that was one of the things you were mentioning about funding as well. I remember, I think it was the sugary beverage tax. Isn't that what did a lot of the funding in Philadelphia for the parks and recreation and the programming and things? And, I was just curious, is there a way of either continuing that to have it, instead of being new, but maintaining what you have, or where's the energy in the community about those kind of issues, or is it too divided? I see a smile on Jasmine's face there. She's taking the political answer.
Yeah, I will take a back seat here.
I don't know if it's divided, but I would say something that I think is pretty common in Philadelphia is just more of like a scarcity mindset of, and I hope that's fair to say, and like I'm saying this also not being from Philadelphia and having lived in different cities and worked with different cities, but I think like there's just like a lot of territory protecting, and definitely it's, the largest poor city, and so there's a sense of like when you give money to something, you're taking it away from something else. And so I think that's a lot of the conversation I hear is like, well, we can't give to parks because schools are more important, or we can't give to because police are more important, because something's more important, not because we shouldn't. So I don't, I think people here love their parks. I just think like at the end of the day, they have Maslow's hierarchy of needs and probably like view it through those lens, like all humans. And yes, I'm not on the record, so please don't like put me up on a stake and burn me. I'm trying to.
No, it's fair. I mean,
be thoughtful and like candid, and as someone who's like trying also to like just support solutions and figure out like how I can plug in. I don't know the answer, but I do think that, yeah, I think like habit and learned behavior is always hard to change. And so,
change for change sake's a waste of energy in the first place. And so, it has to have that cell. And being from the Lehigh Valley, so not too far from Philadelphia, the Delaware Valley, Pennsylvania in general is definitely very pie economy, in that we slice things up into our little pieces, but we don't get outside of that. We have more than one pie, so that's kind of the way things are, it's all or nothing. And I can appreciate that growing up in the Lehigh Valley, because it's very steel mentality, if you will, protect, because if you give things away, that means you're giving away something that you could have had, as opposed to, it's not just sharing, right?
yeah.
So I can appreciate that. Now, what about, we only have a few minutes here in a sense, but we had some opportunity to clear some gripes, clear some challenges, clear some questions. Are there some energizing solutions that we've seen recently or have read anywhere, of things that might be able to lean into some successes? I know, Pauline, you're working on kind of an SOP project within the trail industry in itself, if you will. Has there been some momentum or any things that you've seen in there? Or Steve, you're new in your position, but you obviously have excelled elsewhere previously. Is there some things that you're bringing along with you that may be momentum in your new position, or you have ideas on?
I guess I can add. So kind of just going back on what I said before, is just trying to get the community engagement, because I don't know how much it was before. I'm not faulting anybody or saying anything about anybody on the record. But that's what I want to do, like not focus on, again, like I said, we have so many parks here that people are unaware of, to just get everybody to know what's here in the community. Like, you don't have to travel far if, because people don't know, like, hey, if I'm gonna go play basketball, I know there's no basketball court at this park. Well, where is it? I'm trying to do something, again, as rudimentary as making signs and laminating them for the QR code, to just like, hey, here's a list of all our parks with the amenities at each park, and then again, using, like you said, like your GIS, saying you're, 1.2 miles from the nearest, hockey rink, or, you want to walk on a trail, you want to play tennis. These are the parks that have it. And that's just something I think it has been missing, or maybe it's been there and I don't know, but I just want to make it more accessible to everyone. So that's my goal. Like I said, I'm going to work on that. And again, I'm just starting at basic. I'm making my flyers, I'm putting them up at the parks, and then I can get the phone numbers, then I can get the agencies, and then we can just make phone calls and see what works for everybody. Because that's what I need to do right now, is figure out where I can affect everybody, and not just say I threw something on a Facebook page. That's my community engagement, because that doesn't do anything.
Valid. Yeah, just sitting there and counting thumbs up doesn't necessarily really give you an engagement measurement. It just gives you a number.
Yeah. So that's what I'm hoping.
Very cool. Jasmine, Pauline, have you seen any, examples of things that have really been working and are exciting that could, potentially add value to folks or be spun? I like to take the approach of appreciative inquiry. So it's a change management model that, instead of trying to problem solve all the time, it's taking things that work well and trying to redirect that energy in other focuses, other ways.
Um, I don't feel like I have new information to add, but they're small piecemeal things that we're doing now that are working, in the Wissahickon, where we're blessed to have such a broad network of volunteers. And I think, again, that liability piece would be really helpful in being able to leverage, the human power that we have now to do more. But beyond that, I'm just continuously
I
being
guess maybe
optimistic
share,
that
since you
new
have a
funding
broad
streams
network, what are some of the things that you use to get them engaged? What are some of the methods, or, what gets that network so broad?
You stole my question. I was gonna ask that, how you started it, and did you start with like 3 people and then it became 20
can't-
snowball, or?
Yeah, I can't speak to how it started. We're a very old organization. We've been around for nearly 100 years. But I think a model that does work well is that we offer different opportunities for breadth of engagement and volunteerism. We have events a number of times a week where anyone could come should they want to. But for folks that really want deeper engagement, we offer 2 tracks to train them. And so that helps build that community there. And for some of our trained volunteers, like Friends of the Wissahickon is, a really big part of their lives, a big part of their social lives. And once we have this network, it requires a lot of work to nurture it. So again, being fortunate that we have, a number of full-time staff that are dedicated to this, making sure we have, monthly engagement events with them. We give them opportunities to kind of be creative in their approach for volunteering. The volunteers that do, guided hikes and walks, it's kind of on them to design what they want to do. And I think that they really enjoy having that liberty. With our other core of volunteers, sometimes they'll be, assigned to a zone in the park, and they'll be asked to go and look at certain issues. And if they feel so inclined, they recommend projects to us. So it requires a lot of nurturing and a lot of our time and capacity. And yeah. And so I think that's how it works. And that's how we are able to make it work.
Great points in there. It's very intentional, and it doesn't happen in a day.
No.
One thing I can recommend, Steve, even just at the Google level, map out every single one of your playgrounds or every single one of your areas and facilities, and just have a pin on a Google map. That's a starting point, because then what you can do around that is you can encourage folks in the community to go take photos to fill in for that pin. And then it can start creating that kind of user-generated content. That's the big thing in social media in general, is engagement, and getting that thumbs up is one thing. But if we can actually get them to spend that extra 2 minutes to put their piece of something to it, they have that buy-in now. And then they have rubrics like, oh, I took a picture of my kid on the playground. And of course, some people don't want their kids on there, and that's whole different conversations, but you're not telling them to do that. You're just saying, hey, here is this. And then you could go with your QR codes. And did you know 2 miles down the road from here is another thing, and maybe down the road you could create a scavenger hunt around that kind of thing. Or, you may have other avenues, but those QR codes are very powerful tools as well for collecting data. And it doesn't have to be you constantly communicating. It's just there. We have about 2 minutes left here. Is there any kind of last minute thoughts or questions or suggestions for future research, things that I should be looking into more?
I don't have anything yet.
I appreciate you having this roundtable.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we will have 3 more of these scheduled throughout the year. and they will have different kind of topical focuses. Our next one's going to be in May, and it's going to be looking more at that sustainable operations. What does that mean? So digging into some of those, you know, looking at your bioswales or looking at your sustainable trail designs, or is it carry in, carry out? You know, what is zero waste? Some of these kind of conversations that we hear, but maybe we don't know what they mean, or they seem impossible, but they really are just changing your own internal language.
Mhm.
So I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here. Thank you. Please reach out to me, send me an email. Let me know what you need. And I know, Pauline, we're going to be talking again next week on
Yes.
the clean airs and trails kind of thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Welcome.
this has been great.
And
Thank
we
you.
look forward to hosting you again in the future. See ya.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Take care. Bye.